Hello, welcome back. This video will talk about creating a star trail image. If you like this video, please subscribe below. Like and share with your friends and leave me comments. Ask questions, leave suggestions, or just pop in and say hello. You can follow me on Facebook as Amy Astro, where I will share all my Astro adventures with you. Let's find out how to make these dizzying creations. Have you ever wondered how to create a star trail? Well, I'm going to show you that it's a lot easier than you probably thought it was. Alright, so let me show you these settings. I used a Nikon D800 camera with a 14 to 24 millimeter f2.8 lens on it. Each image is taken at approximately 30 seconds each at f3.2, and I used ISO 1000, and it is at 14 millimeters. I have approximately 100 images here taken, and I took these in April of 2018. Now, ISO 1000 is not a really big deal here because I will be stacking these images and they will create a natural swirl around Polaris. So you can have a higher ISO and it really won't affect the image a whole lot. But let me show you right here. I have Polaris right here in the center. And if I was to flip through all of these images, you will start to see everything is starting to spin around Polaris. And you see I have an airplane in there. Don't worry, we'll be able to blend those out really easily. But you can see I've got a definite rotation going on. And the ultimate goal is to make all of these stars create a really nice circle and still maintain some of this foreground detail that's kind of interesting, and it shows that there is movement on the field. Alright, so let's get started. We're going to use the very first image that I have here, and we're going to do some basic adjustments here in Lightroom. I am going to probably increase the exposure just a little bit, increase some contrast, highlights. I think I'm going to probably bring those up just a little bit. Shadows, I can bring those up and you can see the green grass and everything and all the cars and the tents, but I think I'm going to leave this down closer to 0 because I'll address all that later. Now whites, let me show you something really cool with whites. If you hold down the Alt or Option key and click on this tab, watch as I pull this over to the right. You see everything showing up? Everything that's coming in is what is considered white. And I can keep this going until I have this really bright white mess. But really, you just want to bring the whites up until you start to see a few of these items. And if I go back to 0, and I bring it back up, you can see not a whole lot shows up, not too bad. But the same thing holds true for black. If you hold the Alternate or Option key and click on it and you bring it down, you can see everything that is true black. And the more that I pull it down is the darker everything becomes, and it's actually clipped is what it's showing you. And on this whites, you can see if I was to pull this all the way up, at some point I'm going to get some clips over here too. And we don't want that. So let's bring the whites back down. And let's bring the blacks back up because we don't want to really clip a whole lot of information if we don't have to. Let's set that back to 0. And I still have some that's naturally clipped. Alright, so let's turn these little blinkers off here. We can play with the tone curve if we like. We can create a nice little gentle S curve by clicking on the line and bringing it down, bringing it up. And we can turn it off and on and see if we added anything. Not really, but it's okay. Split toning, we won't do any split toning. Now detail. Detail's always a fun one. Lightroom has these presets that are really nice. One is called Sharpen Scenic, and if you select it, it will adjust all of those sliding tabs on the right to match the preset. Alright, but with the sharpening, always remember that it's not only sharpening what you see, it is sharpening the noise that's hidden between everything. So to avoid that, you click on this masking button and hold down the Alternate or Option key on your keyboard and click and drag over to the right, and everything that's white is getting sharpened Everything that is black is not getting sharpened. So you really want to bring this over so it's more of the edges that are getting sharpened and not the noise. And that looks good right there. I'm going to zoom in at 3:1, and I want you to see what my noise looks like. And I'm going to take this luminance section under noise reduction, and I'm going to pull it up to between 20s and 30s somewhere, and that just smooths out our noise some so it's not as obvious. Really nice. And color noise is at 25 automatically. If I slid that all the way down to 0, you will see what your camera really produces, which is a lot of blue and magentas, and that's not what we want. So 25 is really a good number. So let's minimize that and zoom all the way back out again. Okay, we've got our lens correction. This is the natural angling, if you want to call it, that your lens creates. And I'm going to fix it as best we can. It kind of straightened out the edges a little bit. You can see that again. There you go. So that fixes some of it. I do have some transformation. I've got some angles here that were created by having such a large wide angle lens. And I may or may not address those later. It just depends. I have a feeling some of this I'll be able to blend out and it won't be as obvious. Let's shrink this some. And effects again, let's see, dehaze is always a good one. And you can just bring it up just gently. It just adds a little bit more contrast to things. And we'll minimize that up. And the last thing that I want to do is I know I want this finished image to be an 8x10 because I need to print it. So we're going to come down here to 8x10. And we're going to come up to where we want the image. Now I would like Polaris as centered as I possibly can. And that looks pretty good right there. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Let's say done. And now I have an 8x10 image. Okay, so I have all of these settings on this first image, and what I need to do is I need to copy them all the way to the last one. So with the first image selected, scroll all the way down to the end, and hold down your Shift key and select the last button, okay? Come up here to Settings, and let's do a Sync Settings. And that's gonna sync all of my settings. Let's check all of them. I didn't do any transformation, and I do want to keep the crops and all that good stuff there. And this will sync all of our settings from the first image all the way through to the last image. So let's choose Synchronize. And we'll come back when that's done. It takes a minute or so for it to get all of them. All right, they are finished synchronizing. And if I flip through a couple of these images here, you will see all of these settings here are the same. Comes another one. It takes just a moment for them to load up. But that's really handy. So now that I have them all exactly the same, I need to export them and bring them into Photoshop. Now I could export all 100 of these images as raw files over to Photoshop, but just be aware that this is going to be a gigabyte size file. It could potentially choke your computer. So what I will do is I will turn them all into JPEGs, because at this point I've already handled all the raw that I need to handle. So select the first one and scroll all the way down to the end and hit Shift and grab the last one. And we are going to go to File, Export, and we're going to export them to a very specific location. So let's go find our location here. I am working off my desktop right now in a special folder. Let's see if we can find it here just for YouTube, and I'm going to put all my JPEG files right there and say choose. Okay, I'm going to add them to the catalog. I'm not going to rename them. I am not going to adjust this other than 100% file size. I'm not changing my file size, no watermarking, no post-processing. I'm just going to say export. And that's going to take a few minutes to occur, and it has a nice little slider bar. And when it gets all the way to the end, we know we are done and ready to move on to Photoshop. So I'll be right back. So we're about 5 minutes into exporting here. I'm about halfway done. So you can see this whole process is going to take about 10 minutes for 100 files. So don't be surprised when it takes a little bit of time, but this is the longest that anything takes with this process. Star trails are easier than you think, and I will show you in a moment. Alright, so that took about 13 minutes to process all of those files into JPEGs. A little bit longer than I hoped, but that's about the hardest part to do. So now let's jump over to Photoshop. We have our image ready, and we've got to load all of our images here as layers. Now the easiest way for us to do that is to go over here to File, Scripts, and we are going to load files into a stack. And we go find our files, which are on my desktop. Let's go find them in a special directory just for you all under JPEG images, and we grab the first one and let's get all of them there. One swoop and say open. I'm going to go ahead and sort by name, so hopefully they'll show up in order. And we don't want to automatically align these, because if we did, the majority of that image are the stars, and it will try to align all the stars, which will then cause your foreground to start spinning around your image, and that's not what we want. So we're just going to let them all come in. These were taken on a tripod. They were still, there was no bumping going on, so they should all line up naturally without any problem. So let's say OK, and it's going to take a minute or so. It's going to start bringing in all these images. It will drop them all into layers for me. And once they all pop back in, we will come back in just another moment. Alright, so that took a couple minutes to load everything, but I've got all my images here as layers as we pop through. And you can tell that these are JPEG files, but look at my file size. They are 8.51 gigs. So this file is absolutely enormous. Now imagine if we had left these as raw images. They would have just been beyond working, and we would have killed a computer in the process. Not necessarily something that we want to do. So I'm scrolling all the way down to the bottom of my list, and this is going to be my base image. Doesn't matter what it looks like, don't care. And we want to come down here to this next image, and the second to the bottom image, we want to take the blend layer to lighten. Now we're not going to see anything, but just know that that one layer is now lightened. Now we need all 100 of these images to be lightened. And I don't want to sit here and click through all 100 of these layers to make them lighten. So let's find an easy way to do that. If on this layer that we just made lighten and we right mouse click, you have a copy layer style option. Select it. Now grab the next layer up, scroll all the way to the top of your list, shift key, grab the last one, and let's right mouse click again, and let's go to paste layer style. Now how much easier does that get? Every one of these images are now lightened, and lo and behold, we now have a star trail. Okay, but there's a few things that I want to address as this. Now we know we have this really cool meteor. We've got to leave that, very important. We have a couple little airplanes that are running through our image that we want to get rid of. Now we can do this as easy as just cloning them out or doing a content aware fill on this image, but I think I'm going to address it over here in these images. It will just make things a little bit clearer, but I've got 100 layers. I need to find out which layer it's on. But also we have this one little area here. Let me zoom in for you so you can see. And let's drag that window down. This guy's got his little red headlight on while he's studying some books, and he's just all over the place over this 100 photo session. So I want to find one image or two that best shows him working underneath his umbrella on his Astro items. But I do like these star trails of people walking back and forth to the little warm-up shed that we've got over here. And we've got some people in their tents that are lighting them up. And so I'd like to find at least one image that shows that, but maybe not all these images, because the lightning just kept intensifying. And we've got some more light trails of people walking around. And there's our other tent. So let's do a Control-0 and zoom all the way back out. And what I want to do is come all the way down to the very bottom again. Come to this first image. I'm going to hit the alternate or option key and turn all of them off. Just like that, they are gone. And I'm going to zoom in on the area that I think I'm going to want to work on the most, which will be this area right through here. Okay, so I don't want to see that. Now, yes, it is on the first image, but that's okay. It's not so bad. So what I'm going to do, it probably scare some folks, I'm going to create a layer mask. I'm going to paint with a black brush. I'm going to paint 100%, and I am just going to put a hole right there on my image. Okay, so we turn on the next layer. Notice that hole just disappeared. But let's zoom in on this car just a little bit more. That's an okay image, but I think I've got another one in the stack that shows the gentleman there just a little bit better. So let's go ahead and move up. Put another layer mask on, and let's paint him out. Don't tell him I'm painting him out. I don't want to hurt his feelings. All right, let's turn the next layer on and create another layer mask, and let's paint him out. Now what I do need to do, Command-0, is keep an eye out for these crazy mouse, is watch out for these airplanes that are going to pop in at some point. All right, so that one over there looks fine. Let's go up to the next layer. Oh, he turned on his lightness 10. I'm going to go ahead and create a layer mask here, and I'm just going to paint out whatever's going on right here, because I know I've got at least one image in this stack that's good. All right, so watch this. Let's create another layer here. Option, click, drag your mask, and I am now copying it up to the next image, so I don't have to keep painting on it. All right, there's the next image. Let's just keep copying it up until I find the image that I like the best to keep this gentleman in. Let's turn one on, alternate or option, click and drag up, and we just keep going through all 100 of our images. I don't want to keep that one, so I'm going to copy up that layer mask and make him disappear. I am just continuing to copy this mask all the way up. Let's zoom in. Let's see what he's doing. Nope, not quite yet. Command-0, zoom out. And copy the mask up. Oh, looks like he's got some movement going on down there. There we go. That looks like him. That's what I want. I want to keep that one. Command-0. So no mask on this one. Nope, there's a big airplane. Let's see if he'll be as easy to fix. Let's zoom in. And let's start with the Band-Aid. Let's make him just a little bit bigger. Let's see, can I drag my mouse nice and straight all the way down? Now there's probably 20 different ways to do this. And we tend to stick with the ones that we learned first if they work well. All right, that's not so bad. Let's give it another wipe. There we go. And gone. All right, now right here, curiosity's sake, I'm on the mask. What happens if I just wipe them out? Not enough for me to worry about. See, that was nice and easy. I just used my mask. Oh, there he is. You see him? All right. Let's try a mask and see if it can be just that simple. Did he go white? Black, mask. This time I don't think he's disappearing. So let's go with the alternate route. Band-Aid. Make the mouse, whoops. The delay here, because this file size is so huge, is getting me. Okay, I've got the Band-Aid on. That looks pretty good. Got another trail right there going on. But I don't know which file that came in on. But you can always back up and find out where they are and get rid of them. Alright, let's go ahead and finish wiping this out with a Band-Aid. Let's just move things over here. And don't worry, in just a second we're going to downsize this file so it won't be quite as huge to work with. Alright, so that is our star trail. Now it's time, let's go and turn these back on. Now it's time to think about our next step. Alright, so here's our image, and now we're sitting at 8.66 gigs, and we need to downsize this file because it is just really too big to work on. So I'm coming down here to the very bottom image, and you see these little lines over here. If you click on them, I'm going to flatten my image. And this will compress everything down, and now I'm down to 86.3 megs, a much more manageable file for me to work with. I am going to duplicate my layer, and I'm going to zoom in on here. And I'm just going to check things out to see if there's anything that I want to clone out that's bothersome. I do have some hot pixels that I need to address, and some stray things, so let's go ahead and decrease our mouse size. Let's go to the Band-Aid tool and click on all of these little hot pixels or stray things that you don't know why they're there, but they're bugging you, so you just get rid of them. And this is a tedious part where you go in and you look for all these pixels, but please take the time to do so, because if you're going to print this out, you don't want to have these little spots that look like they're dust on your image and people don't understand why they are. This is just a natural occurrence from your camera. All right, and some of these here is actually where the trees are kind of on the thinner side, and the star trails are going back behind the trees. Now, just looking at some of these angles, I question how long they are, and they are a little distracting when they're down so low. So I'm going to get rid of just a few of these. And some of these are obviously hot pixels. And I want you to notice right here, look at these breaks in the star trails. This is because that's a 30-second long image with a 2-second pause in between. Not a whole lot you can do about that because the camera needs a second to download the image, and it takes a second or two, which is going to cause some of that breakage. But we're going to fix that with probably adding a little surface blur to our image. So now you see the general idea here is get rid of all your hot pixels by using the Band-Aid tool. You just zoom in and out and then finish those off. Let's go ahead and make another duplicate copy of this. And let's add ourselves a blur. Let's add just a little bit of a Gaussian blur. I'd like to use a radial blur, but I haven't figured out how to define where my center is, and it makes all kinds of craziness going on. So let's just do Gaussian, and we're going to do, let's say, 1.5 pixels worth of a blur. And let's see where that gets us. Let's scroll up here until I see some, and that just softens those breakings. So they're there, but they're not as obvious, especially when you're zoomed out at this distance. So let's say OK. But what I've just done is I've blurred the entire image. And while up here it is not so bad, let's turn it off and turn it on. I mean, not too bad. But down here it's not always what we want. So to eliminate that, we can add another mask. Let's zoom all the way out, and let's add a gradient mask. And let's see, I believe if we go top down, that will have all this up here in the mask, and what's not in the mask is down low. All right, so basically this is our image, this is our start trail, and you can see it was just as easy as 1, 2, 3. We first started out with some general alterations in Lightroom, and we copied all those settings to all of our images. We exported everything as a JPEG, and then we came over here in Photoshop and let's get the Photoshop menu up here. Photoshop, we did a script, and we load all of our files into a stack. Once we had them all loaded up over here, we took them and took the second from the bottom, changed our blend mode to lighten, and then we right mouse clicked on that layer and we copied the settings and then pasted them on all of the layers above. So in one fell swoop we had everything as lighten, and we had a star trail up here. Then we systematically went through every single image and cloned out or masked out stray items such as planes or people moving in the foreground until we had a nice clean image. To finish it off, we flattened the image so it was a smaller file to manage, and then we added a slight Gaussian blur, about 1.5 pixels, and that was it. Now you can play with your colors if you want. You can saturate, desaturate, add contrast, remove contrast, whatever your heart desires. But you can see it really didn't take that long to create a star trail. So this is it. This is my star trail over at Deerlick Astronomy Village in Sharon, Georgia. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, take a moment and like it down below. Leave me a comment with suggestions on how I could improve this, or if you would like to see other videos. And as usual, I wish you all the very clearest of skies in the future.